Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Whiting, and welcome to my weekly podcast. I tell you, this is one I've been looking forward to for quite a while, and you'll see why in just a few minutes. When I first contacted this lady, she graciously offered to send me a copy of her book so I could take a look at it before we met and spoke today. And when I opened the package and I looked at the title, and I said, this is going to be a good one. The title of the book is Clean Eating, Dirty Sex: Sensual Superfoods and Aphrodisiac Practices for Ultimate Sexual Health and Connection. And I've always taught people that everything in your life is connected. Your mind's connected with your body and vice versa, and your wellness affects everything, including your sex life. And here is an expert on the subject. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Lisa Davis.
Thank you so much, Dr. Whitting. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be interesting. First of all, let's start. How did you come up with this absolutely fantastic title?
Well, I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were joking around, and I said my two favorite things are clean eating, dirty sex. And right after I said it, I said to him, that's a book title. And I'd been wanting to do a book for a long time, but I kind of put it on the back burner. And then, to make a long story short, I was speaking with a woman who's very successful and has a few very successful books. And she said, do you have any ideas? And I told her, and she literally set me up with her literary agent 5 minutes later, and she took me on. Because I think she saw that, wow, with a title like that.
I totally
fun.
agree. I mean, that's absolutely. I've been looking at it for a long time now, and I thought, boy, wish I'd have thought of that. It's just one of those perfect things. Well, let's get into a little bit about why you wrote the book.
Well, I wrote the book because I feel like people aren't utilizing food as nutrition as much as they should. I think that there's not a lot out there in mainstream medicine about the benefits of what we're eating. And what's interesting about eating for better sexual health is it really also correlates to cardiovascular health because we can get into the foods later, but that's why I wanted to write it, because I wanted to say to people, if your sex life is lackluster, it could be what you're eating. It could also be emotional issues and resentment and things that I talk about in the book. It could also be lack of fitness. So I wanted to do something that's holistic. It's not just one thing, like eat a bunch of blueberries and you'll have great sex. If you eat a bunch of blueberries and you cut out the trans fats and you communicate well with your partner and you go out and you exercise, yes, you'll have better sex. So I wanted to have something that people could do, and it's not even if you're celibate. I tell people this book will still benefit you because you're eating in a way that is very beneficial to your overall health.
You bet. And we do extensive surveys on our clients here at our institute. And one of the questions that we always ask is basically, how's your sex life? And it's amazing that when we go through the surveys and the answers, the worse they score on the whole survey, the more they complain about, as you say, a lackluster sex life. And if you consider, most people don't consider, but if you consider all of the factors involved in sexual performance, your wellness is it's 90% of the job done.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. And it's interesting to me that that's not more mainstream information. I think a lot of people get surprised. And that's another reason I wanted to do the book is I've been in health media for 20 years, both in television and radio. And I get about 4 to 6 books a week for the last 10 years. So I have a lot of books, and I hadn't seen one like this that really talks about not just the foods. I've seen a couple on foods that are short, but also have the emotional components and looking at exercise. And then there's a memoir portion to the book because I struggled with having a good relationship with sex, and I also struggled with what I call dirty eating. So I thought being able to share my own experiences, it's helped. I like to read other people's stories, so I hope people enjoy that as well.
And they do. They like the personal touch and the personal experience. Somehow, for most people, it tends to validate what you're saying, and that makes all the sense in the world if you understand human behavior, which clearly you do. Um, so let's kind of go through the various things that you talk about here, um, because there's so many sidelines that come into play. Uh,
Right.
First of all, I think we talked about what poor diet can produce in the way of being unwell. But then in chapter 3, you talk about be the change, define your lifestyle, and the first section is diet, not dieting. You betcha.
Oh
I
yeah.
think diet is the one of the worst four-letter words in the English language, and it sets people up for almost immediate failure.
Yep. It
And what
really does.
what we need to
It,
do is we need to teach people how to eat well. And if they can grasp that concept and understand how their body processes food, they won't weight won't be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, people probably like, oh my gosh, I've heard this before, but it really is all about lifestyle. And so what I do is I talk to some people who work in lifestyle change. For example, Beth Frady's MD. She is a lifestyle medicine specialist, health and wellness coach, founder of Wellness Synergy. She teaches at Harvard. She's just incredible. And she gives some great advice around something she calls MOS, motivation, obstacles, strategies, and strengths. Because I wanted people to be able to go in the book and not you have to have more than just, okay, here's what you eat, here's what you do, here's some tips on talking to your partner, here's some tips on looking at your own body and feeling comfortable with yourself and your sexuality and all that. I wanted something about, well, what can I actually do? Another big thing is finding your why. That is huge, because if you don't know why you want to get healthier, it's going to be hard to make things stick. You have to really have something that's pushing you. I'm almost 52, and I'm at that point where I want to be functional. I mean, I obviously I still care about myself aesthetically, but it's more about wanting to be super active. My father-in-law is 86, and he still plays baseball with guys half his age, and he still trains twice a week. He's amazing. He rides his bike, and I want to be like that. And I think if we could, as a society, get more about being functional and feeling good rather than, looking perfect and thin, which, not everyone's meant to be, or I don't think anyone's meant to be perfect, I think we'd all be happier.
Well, absolutely. And it's a funny
Yeah,
thing about when you talk to younger people, they have this invincibility concept, and they think
right.
they're never going to get old, and they're never going to get frail, and they're never going to get diseased. And so they oftentimes live the first half of their life as if it's going to go on forever. And then it catches up with them, and there they are, and then they have to do a whole lot more work to turn the clock back, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, it's true. That's why if you can start early, but it's never too late at the same time.
Oh,
Some people
never,
say, well, I'm
never.
60, why try now? But there's people who are 70 who start lifting weights and notice that they're feeling better and they're moving better. And, we lose muscle mass after age 40. And you really need to do some kind of body weight exercise, whether it be yoga, Pilates, push-ups, get some cans from your cupboard and do some bicep curls. I mean, just go for a walk. There's so many things that we can do that are going to keep us feeling better.
You got it. All right. In this section, you have a listing adopting new habits. Let's say that we have listeners to this podcast who, after they listen to it, or if they've gotten this far, we've obviously got their interest, um, and they're saying to themselves, adopt new habits. Well, let's see, I've got about 400 bad habits. So, where do I start? So, I guess my question to you is what would you advise someone listening to us today? How do they begin that what can, for some people, be a daunting and overwhelming task?
I think the best way to begin, I think, again, is you have to start slow. And you don't want to suddenly say, okay, I'm never going to eat white flour again. Unless you're that type of person who wants to just say, okay, I'm going to cut out the white flour and cut out the white sugar. What you need to start doing is replacing things and say, okay, instead of having a bagel for breakfast, I'm going to have some eggs. I'm going to have some avocado. I'm going to have something that satiates me. And healthy fat is a big thing, and protein are very satiating. At lunch, maybe I'll still have bread on my sandwich, but I'll go for a whole grain bread. Or at night, maybe I'll, instead of the pasta, pasta. Maybe I can do, some sort of quinoa or something that's still a grain, so sort of moving slowly, I think, because if you just take everything away that people like, it's tough. But if you're adding things in, you're not going to have as much room to eat the stuff you usually eat, right? But still having on occasion. But some people are more like, okay, I just want to do this. I want to take the sugar out. I want to cut the white flour out. I'm ready to go. And that's great. But if you're not, I think you need to go slowly. And again, you got to know why you're doing it. Otherwise, you're going to be like, forget it, I'm eating that cake.
Well, exactly. And
Right.
I think people tend to generate a lot of self-pity,
Yes.
and then when they combine that with the fact that all of us are constantly looking for immediate gratification, those can be two terrible pitfalls if you don't handle it properly, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is. And I have a lot of food sensitivities, and sometimes I feel sorry for myself because I'm sensitive to nuts, I'm sensitive to wheat, I'm sensitive to dairy, I'm sensitive to corn. And the other day I found this amazing, I think it was swerve, which is made from erythritol. So I try not to eat sugar, but I do like some of the healthier alternatives. And it was amazing. It was almond flour, and there was no sugar. But I know I'm sensitive to almond flour. I know I shouldn't make these, even though they're technically healthy for other people who don't have nut sensitivities. But I was feeling sorry for myself, and I'm like, I'm going to eat them anyway. And then I just felt tired for like 2 days, and I'm like, why did I do that? And then I'm like, why can't I be like everybody else? So trust me, I understand the struggle is real.
It definitely is. All right, let's move on to part 3 of the book, and let's
Sure.
talk a little bit about the ladies and their hormones and their menopause and their inability to get a good night's sleep.
Oh my goodness, that is huge. So when I turned 43, and I write about this in the book, I mean, I crashed into perimenopause, which is what happens before you reach menopause, and that's when your cycles start getting out of balance, and you get some of the symptoms like the hot flashes, moodiness, breakouts, irritability. I mean, I was just a monster. My family's like, what happened to Lisa's usually so upbeat? What's going on? So it was tough, and I ended up doing bioidentical hormones. It's a very small dose, but it really helped me. Now, there are other things you can do. You can talk to a naturopath. I recommend a functional medicine doctor, endocrinologist. Get your hormones checked, see how you're doing, because you could be eating all the right foods, communicating well with your partner, working out, and still have trouble in the bedroom. So you definitely want to get your hormones checked out, your progesterone, your estrogen, also your thyroid hormones. And we've got to get sleep. I mean, if any of you listen to my show, It's Your Health with Lisa Davis or Naturally Savvy Radio, I mean, sleep is so important. I go to bed every night between 8:30 and 9. And even if someone's visiting I haven't seen in years out of town, they know I warn them ahead of time. I'll see you during the day, but at night I'm sleeping
Yeah.
because it makes such a big difference to our
Well,
overall health. And
lack of sleep is one of the greatest stressors on the body and eventually the mind.
Completely.
All right,
It
so
really is.
let's not leave the boys out of this discussion.
Of course.
I've been trying to teach men for years that erectile dysfunction is not a Viagra deficiency.
Right.
And while it can help, but it's not addressing often the underlying causes, which, as you say, are most often circulatory issues with the
Right.
cardiovascular system.
Yeah, it really is. And that's why I was so happy that this wonderful man named Mark Ramirez, he shared his story in chapter 6, Kiss Erectile Function Goodbye. He talked about how his whole family had health problems and diabetes, and then his mother and brother passed away. And and he was diagnosed at that time with type 2 diabetes. And it took him 10 years to finally make changes because he was tipped off going, okay, I need to get this erectile function under control. And so he went on a plant-based diet. He lost a bunch of weight. He got off all of his medications. And he's at 50 years old today, still medication-free. He's in the best shape of his life. Now he travels around and talks to other men and say, this is what you need to do. And I'm not 100% plant-based, but I do, I'll eat like small amounts of grass-fed beef or organic chicken, fish. I do think, though, as many plants as you can get makes a huge difference because of the antioxidants and the flavonoids, and those are the things and the nitric oxide, those all have to do with blood flow and the health of your arteries.
Boy, it sure is. That's absolutely true. let's move along. Well, before we get into the next section, why don't you tell
Sure.
folks how they can contact you, how they can get the book, give them some love.
Oh, of course. Well, if you go to cleaneatingdirtysex.com, there's a button there that you can click to go to get the book on Amazon. But it's, you know what I love about Skyhorse Publisher? They're publishing, excuse me, they're the publisher. They're so good about getting it into bookstores and independent bookstores. And I've heard from people all over the place, all over the country, oh, there's this little bookstore in my town and it has your book. And it's such a good feeling. I also really want to reiterate to people this book, or I don't think I've even mentioned it yet. It's not about dirty sex. It's just a play on words. Is there information about sex in the book? Yes. Is it dirty? No. And I'm so glad, Dr. Whitting, that you understand that, and you've obviously seen the book. But for some people, they immediately get turned off by the word dirty, and then they won't look at it. And I'm trying to get people to understand it's humor. I think it's funny. And you
Well,
obviously thought it
well,
was
I thought it was
funny.
hysterical, and I thought it was the absolute marketing genius for selling a book. But I agree with you. There'll be some people that are going to be initially turned off, but I think there's going to be far more that are going to be very interested, because if that doesn't pique your interest, even if you choose to be slightly offended, then there's something wrong with you, because it's a great title. All
Well,
right,
thank you.
let's move along. Let's talk about in part four. You talk about movement, connection, intimacy, and how would you say that those things are enhanced by a clean diet?
Well, it's funny because it all goes together. I think when you're eating clean, you want to take better care of your body. Exercise is huge, especially aerobic exercise, because again, we're talking about blood vessels again. One of the things you mentioned earlier with men and Viagra not being the answer is that when you lift weights, for both men and women, it boosts your testosterone. And that's really important. And with the circulation that happens with the exercise. And then when you're looking at yoga, which is in studies have been shown to help with sexual health. It's a lot of that good body weight exercise. It's good for your muscles. It affects your body image. And then partner dancing. I think that's why that Dancing with the Stars show is so popular because I think I wish they were out there doing it instead of just watching it. But it's kind of sexy, right? It's kind of fun and nice, and it gives you an opportunity to spend time with your partner where you don't have time to be thinking about the kids and the chores and the work stress because you got to learn the dance steps. You got to be present, and that's where I think a lot of us are not these days, right? Our mind is always in 1,200 places at once.
Well, we as a society, we're always living in the future or in the past, and we're missing
Right.
what's going on around us, unfortunately. All right.
Yeah, it's
Well, I
true.
want to move now along to chapter 14 because I really want to spend some time on this because I think it'll be valuable to our listeners.
Sure.
Chapter 14 is the Clean Eating Dictionary, the ABCs of sexual health. And while obviously we don't have time for you to recite the entire chapter, and we don't want to do that anyway because we want to make them go out and get the book. But
Right.
in a short synopsis, what are the ABCs of sexual health and good eating?
Well, you want to look at foods, like I mentioned, that are high in antioxidants, high in flavonoids, and high in nitrates. So let's look at nitrates first. Okay, so when you have nitrates, basically nitric oxide, it allows your blood vessels to dilate, to get bigger. Okay, and that's what we want because this is for men and women. This isn't just for men. Okay, that you want those blood vessels open because they're small down there. So foods like beets are really fantastic because that helps the blood flow to all areas of the body. There's also other foods that's interesting that actually don't have nitrates in them, but they have L-arginine, which converts, like turkey is a good, chicken is good, that converts to nitric oxide. The other thing you want to look at is you want to look at healthy fats because healthy fats are incredible. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of healthy fats. And when you eat the healthy fats, that also helps with hormonal balance, which is big. So you're looking at blood flow, you're looking at hormonal balance. You're also looking at things that are going to keep the blood vessels flexible, and that's where the antioxidants come in. So an apple a day not only keeps the doctor away, but it keeps you doing well down there.
Absolutely.
Another one that's great is blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, berries just in general. They both are full of antioxidants and flavonoids, which is terrific. Celery is really interesting because it actually contains two pheromones, endosterone and endostrenol. I'm not the best at pronouncing things. And these alter the scent in your sweat glands, and that can help attract a mate. Chia seeds are great. They've got the omega-3 fatty acids. They help with inflammation. Oh, that's the other thing that the healthy fat does as well. If we're looking at dark chocolate, that's wonderful. That's got a lot of antioxidants in it. It also has a phenylethylamine. It's a chemical that boosts endorphins, your feel-good hormones. It's got flavonoids. Do you want to go for 70%? Another great one is sweet potatoes. That has really good source of carbs that doesn't spike your blood sugar because you need energy too. You don't want to be tired and sluggish. So I tell people if they have a romantic evening plan, stay away from like the heavy dairy, stay away from the white flours and the things that are going to, you'll have little energy and then you'll burn out. But rather maybe have a little grass-fed meat and a big salad and some healthy, maybe some avocado and or some shrimp. I mean, shrimp is good. Oysters are good because that has zinc. Zinc is another thing that helps boost your testosterone. So there's a lot more, but those are some of the highlights.
Well, and that brings us to chapter 15. And this is an area of it's been an area of interest of mine. As a biochemist, I formulate dietary supplements for a wide variety of companies. And so now we get to sexual enhancement supplements. And you list some very, very good suggestions. We're not going to go into each one for the time we have. We're going to make you go out and buy the book. But I mean, there's some of the classics in here, some of the old standards, and some relatively new ones where you make some very viable connections. And I think it's a short chapter, but it's a very powerful one.
Well, I have to give credit to Ward Bond, PhD. He's fantastic. This actually came from a book that Dr. Ward Bond did on sexual enhancement supplements, and he let me use this in my book, which was so huge. It was so nice of him because this book was a lot of work. I interviewed over 40 different health experts for this book to get as much great information from all different types, whether it be exercise physiologists, nutritionists, dietitians, MDs that have, a clue about nutrition and food as medicine, sexologists, psychologists, relationship experts. I mean, the whole 9 yards. So for him to do that was really fantastic. And it's a cookbook too, by the way, which I'm sure you were going to get to, but I had to sneak that in just in case.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. As an amateur cook and one who finds solace, therapy, and satisfaction in cooking. In fact, I do all the cooking in my house. I rarely let anyone else in the kitchen because I'm just better than they are. That's all. But in looking through the recipes in here, I mean, some of these are not just designed for healthier eating and better sex, but they're darn right yummy. I've already tried a few of them, and if, as you said earlier, if someone is happy with their sex life or doesn't have one and doesn't care to get one anytime soon, the book for the recipes alone is worth every penny.
Oh, thank you. And the recipes were created by Erin McDonald. She's a registered dietitian, and she's a registered dietitian for Clean Eating Magazine. And she also does their Clean Eating Academy, which is a great way to really learn how, the basics and the cooking and all the things that you need to eat clean. And she's fantastic. And when I wanted to do the book, I immediately thought of her because she can take spices that just seem so simple and mix them in a way that just gives so much flavor to very simple foods. All these recipes are whole foods. There's no flour in this book or rice in this book. And the dessert she'll sweeten with dates and other things. And they're just fabulous. I mean, the ooey gooey brownies alone are just so yummy.
Well,
and dark chocolate.
And the great thing about it is that while the recipes are obviously health-minded and health-driven, they don't taste like something out of a day-old health food store. They're absolutely delicious.
No, not at all.
They're delicious.
And as you know from my memoir portion of the book, I talk about going to the health food store in the 70s where everything smelled like carob and cardboard. So no, this is not that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fascinating. I highly recommend everyone go out and get the book for whatever reason appeals to you. And before we say goodbye, Lisa, give everybody some contact information once again.
Wonderful. Well, you can go to cleaneatingdirtysex.com. That's www.cleaneatingdirtysex.com. You can also find me at itsyourhealthwithlisadavis.com. I do several podcasts, and you can find them there. Dr. Whitting, I'd love to have you on my show. You're wonderful.
Well, we'll look at that, certainly.
I'm very active on Twitter, Health Media Gal 1, just the number 1. That's the best place. If you like pictures of cute dogs and healthy food and outdoor nature, then you'll enjoy my my Twitter.
Oh, great. All right. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this, and I'm sure our listeners will too. I can hardly wait to get the feedback. I'm sure it will be varied. Lisa, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to working with you again.
Definitely. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Take care.